As even a hobbyist historian knows, we're plagued by ancient alien conspiracies. I know a lot of you out there watch shows like Ancient Aliens or Netflix's Ancient Apocalypse simply because watching people be stupid on television is entertaining. Others watch the shows because there really isn't enough good sci fi. The problem is that many people watch the shows and don't know what they are watching is basically garbage. Personally, I think some channel would be able to make a highly watched show merely debunking every bit of these ideas. A lot of the times, the real stories are just as compelling as the science fiction ones, and that's just what we're going to talk about today. Let's learn a little bit about the major fake archaeology ideas that have to do with Sumer. And then let's dig a little bit deeper. Why not start with gold? Gold! I've been asked more than a few times about gold mines in Mesopotamia. At first, this sounds reasonable because you always hear about ancient treasures, and when ancient people are depicted in contemporary art, they're wearing tons of the stuff. The problem is, it doesn't make much sense when looking at Mesopotamia in particular. The world-renowned con man and major collector of forgeries, Z. Sitchin, proposed that aliens came to Mesopotamia for the gold that can be readily found in lapis lazuli as fuel for anti-gravity devices. So many problems in this one little spot. Let's ignore the whole anti-gravity device needing gold thing for a second. Perhaps the aliens used gold in their technology and we don't understand the science yet, or something. Whatever. This sounds reasonable at least, but then how does Sitchin know about the fuel and the device? The Sumerians didn't talk about gravity. They didn't talk about fuel. They didn't mention any gold mines in Mesopotamia. Most people don't know this, but Mesopotamia doesn't have any gold. If aliens came to mine gold, they chose the worst spot. But wait, I hear you ask. What if the aliens mined all the gold? That would explain why we don't see any. Excellent thought, but it's not that we don't find gold. We also don't find the types of rock formations that would contain gold. If aliens mined out all of the gold, then you would still see the sort of rocks left behind that used to contain that shiny ore. Hold on. There's gold in all of that lapis lazuli, isn't there? No, that's an ironic bit of iron pyrite, better known as fool's gold. What's more, lapis doesn't even come from Mesopotamia. It's from Afghanistan. If aliens came to Earth, and specifically to Mesopotamia, in the hopes of finding gold and ended up mining fool's gold instead, what does that make them? Fine, so there isn't any gold in Mesopotamia. Perhaps there was gold nearby. Gold is somewhat rare on Earth, but we do have it. You know where there's gold? Lots of gold? I mean hordes of it? In the asteroid belt. Yeah, so apparently these aliens are just stupid. The next one is Nibiru. Again with Sitchin. You have lots of stuff about the planet Nibiru. The idea goes a little something like this. Nibiru is a planet in our solar system made out of plutonium that is cloaked. And you know where all of the aliens come from. Watch Battlefield Earth. It's basically that. Or don't, because it's a terrible movie. Anyway, the various texts about journeys to Nibiru are actually talking about traveling back and forth to this planet, according to the Sitchin idea of Nibiru. I'll bet you're expecting me to say that the word isn't even in Mesopotamian languages. But it is a real word. Nibiru does talk about a planet. Nibiru is from Babylonian times and not Sumerian. It's their word for the planet Jupiter. Nibiru is from Sumerian times and it's talking about the holy city of Nippur. Nippur is not a lost city. We know exactly where it is and what its importance is. The ruins of Nippur are about 50 miles downriver from Babylon. It was the holy center during the Sumerian time periods. It's where the temple of Enlil was and where the various religious processions converged. All right, astronomy and ancient knowledge. It's often suggested, and not just by Sitchin, but by the whole rogue gallery of conspiracy types, that the Sumerians popped up out of nowhere at 3500 BCE, or 3,500 years ago, because they don't know the difference. Some use the young Earth number and say 6,000 years ago. I've even seen 35,000 years ago, and even, remarkably enough, 35 billion years ago, because why not add some zeros? Confused? Don't worry. None of those numbers really mattered. 3500 BCE is roughly when the Proto-Sumerian culture developed into a civilization. But it wasn't sudden, and it didn't happen everywhere evenly. So the date is not hard and fast. There are also different definitions for a civilization, with different hallmarks of civilization. This will change the date. One thing about civilization is that it's additive. Each new idea refines the ideas that come before. Then this brings us nicely to astronomy, because in Sumerian, scholars were exceptionally terrible at it despite their skills in other areas. Oh, nobody else was great at it either, but it's an area that you would expect some skill at if they were being taught by people who could see the whole world from orbit. Let's get some perspective. The oldest star chart is thought to be an artifact known as the Nebra sky disk. It's from 3,600 years ago, so roughly 1600 BCE. Enuma Anu Enlil dates to 1595 BCE, but was compiled from older documents. It doesn't contain a map of the stars and is more focused on omens than proper astral matters. The Venus tablet of Amasduka could be as old as 1483 BCE. But the dating is debatable, and it shows a clear progression of knowledge from what was unknown to what was known. The Babylonian star catalogs date to about 1200 BCE. Moving over a little bit, the Hipparchus star map is thought to be from 1100, and the Antikythera mechanism only comes from 205 BCE. However, it is very complicated. Nothing comes from 1900 BCE or older, and that's how old it would have to be indicate an advanced astronomy from the Sumerians. The descent of Inanna, which is hard to date, but may be from the Old Babylonian time period, is thought to depict the occasional disappearance of Venus. But it doesn't contain prediction maps or any other hints that the recording culture understood that actual cycle. Why is this? Everyone can look at the stars and map them out. Well, for the most part, those later cities were seafaring. The Sumerians had ships, but they were coast-hugging vessels or river runners. If you can't see land, then you must navigate by other means. Other cultures were better at the stars because they mattered to the merchants and other travelers. It's as simple as that. All right, here's a fun one. Shapeshifting Snake Men. Every now and again you will see references to shape-shifting snake men, aliens who control the government. This is so silly that you would be forgiven for thinking that this was another one of Sitchin's ideas. It's actually a little bit older and comes from a more reputable source, Weird Tales. You see, shape-shifting snake people started a bit after Robert E. Howard first started writing about them in his Kull and Conan books. They sparked the cultural imagination and played into fears of the fascist and communist movements. Much of the world was watching the horrendous things that these terrible groups were doing and couldn't imagine that a human could be responsible. They read Weird Tales for a bit of healthy escapism, but could not let the existential dread go. Fast forward to the Cold War, And now there were government programs and they had things in the sky. Things they didn't want people to know about. If people knew about these programs, then the various dangerous dictatorships would soon enough. Right or wrong, this was the thinking at the time. They couldn't just tell people to mind their own business because this was the 20th century and it was the golden age of journalistic integrity. A frightening thought for anybody that knows the level of journalistic integrity at the time. The people didn't want to see the news people yelling until they were red in the face. They actually wanted to know what was going on and expected some degree of truth in what they were seeing. Then serendipity happened. One guy started to go on about seeing alien spacecraft. This was like a gift from the gods to the defense program. They could get back to work, and everyone who saw an experimental aircraft could be dismissed publicly as having seen a UFO. This went so well, in fact, that when the government finally admitted that this was exactly what they were doing, everyone still believes it was aliens. But we're drifting away from Mesopotamia at this point. So I think I'll wrap things up here. There you have it. Those are some of the most popular ancient alien theories and a bit of the behind the scenes for those theories. I hope you learned something and I hope you enjoyed. If you like this one, you should check out this video on funerary statues of Ubaid next. Hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.